Hello everyone. Today we are going to take up a new and a very interesting poem called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. There has been a lot of demand by a number of students on this topic. So I have tried to present a PPT on this. Hope this serves meaningful to you. Now, before we go deep into the understanding of this poem, I want to make my students understand what this poem is about. We should first understand that there are two birds in this poem. First one is here, which is inside the cage, and second is someone which is outside, somewhere here. Now, this bird which is inside the cage is a metaphorical representation of all the Afro-Americans, I mean the black Americans, which are under captivity. They do not have freedom. They are fighting for their civil rights. On the contrary, this bird represents white Americans who are enjoying freedom. So, on one account, it might be the story of two birds, but on a wider scale, it is a poem about the discrimination between two communities and how the caged birds feel and longs for their freedom and independence. Let us understand the form and structure of this poem. This poem is divided into 6 stanzas, describing the state of two birds, where one is free and the other is caged in his bar of rage. Out of 6 stanzas, only the first and the third stanza shows the delight of the free bird. So, only the first and the third stanza focuses on the free bird, and the rest of the stanzas concentrate on the plight of the caged birds. So, first and third stanza on the free bird, the rest of the stanzas on the plight of the caged bird. There is no rhyming scheme in this poem. Try to understand that. No rhyming scheme, which means that it is a free verse. And number 2, that there is a technique in poetry whereby a sentence is carried over to the next line. This is called enjambment, which the poem draws the reader's eyes to things of importance in a blunt manner. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a free verse written by the American poet and civil rights activist Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou is widely regarded as the black woman's poet laureate. Her reflections on the society and the time she lived in are vividly expressed in her poetry. Outwardly, the poem, as it often interchangeably known, can be seen as a reflection on social disparity and the ideals of freedom and justice. These are the key words. However, Angelou, with the metaphor of birds, represents the inequality of justice, seen in the society of a time which differentiates between the African American community and the white American counterpart. Let us go into the text of the poem and try to understand it in a very simple way. The free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and tips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. The opening line shows how a bird leaps on the back of the wind, demonstrating the freedom it experienced to move about and glide freely through the air. So, as we were talking, the first stanza is about the free bird. The first stanza is about the free bird, and it leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream. Downstream means following the path of a stream. Till the current ends. These two are very important and key words because downstream and the current reflects water. And here the poet tries to merge the connotations of downstream and current, which reflects water, to that of air, to that of wind, and here reflects that how the free bird dips his wings, and in the orange sun rays, orange here presents the picture of the sun setting in the river. So, and orange here is also a reflection of the positivity. So, the free bird has the positivity, the tranquility, and the courage to claim the sky. So, it is so utterly free and without restraints that it dares to claim the sky, and the whole firmament is his one big. Now, stanza 2. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. Stalks here means to walk slowly and quietly. Here, the bird is entrapped in its cage and can seldom see, seldom means hardly, through his bars of rage. Rage means anger. Now, what is the rage here about? Who is angry here? Anger here reflects the wrath of the white man. It is because of the anger of the white man, the blacks aren't able to see the outer world. So, here the anger is metaphorical in sense. His wings are clipped, and what is clipped here? Here clipped reflects helplessness, and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. So, what does the bird has despite all the helplessness and all the misery? That he opens his throat to sing. This hope is the sign of this throat to sing. Singing quality has the sign of hopefulness. Now, here, poet Maya Angelou contrasts the situation by presenting the image of a caged bird. The caged bird tries to go after his cage in vain. The cage is narrow and its metaphorical bars of rage. Wings are associated with flight, which in turn is associated with freedom. The word, his wings are clipped, the words, his wings are clipped, mean that its freedom is forcibly taken away. A bird tied to the ground represents an image completely opposite to its true nature of flight. This represents the fact of alienation of the bird. But the most important thing is that the caged bird opens his throat to sing. The third stanza says, the caged bird sings with fearful trill of the things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Trill means trembling sound. Now, the caged bird is singing with fearful trill. So, although the bird is frightened, it is singing. And what it is singing about, of the things unknown. This unknown is the representation of freedom. And longed means desired, for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill. So, distant hill again is metaphorical in sense here, which shows that the road for freedom is far away. For the caged bird sings of freedom. The caged bird has a wavering voice. He is singing of freedom, something he does not have. The idea of freedom, it is dream, one he cannot achieve. So, he sings about it. There is fear in his voice. He had never known what freedom tastes like, but hopes to have for his own. His voice can be heard from distant places on hills where it inspires others to dream of freedom. The caged bird does not sing of sadness, but of hope. Inspiration and of freedom. Now, stanza 4. The free bird thinks of another breeze and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and that the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. Check out the lines, these lines are very meaningful. The fourth stanza talks about the privileged nature of the free bird, right? The bird moves on the trade winds through the sighing trees, and he has all the facilities of the fat worms waiting on his dawn bright lawn. Free bird, on the other hand, revels in his freedom. He enjoys flying through the trade winds that blows through the trees. The trade winds here reflects, what does it reflect? Opportunities. Try to understand, students. Sighing trees, again here, probably refers to the sighing sound made by the breeze while passing through the leafy branches. It gives an indication to their lack of freedom, as the trees are also tied to the ground like the caged bird. So, as trees are tied to the ground like the caged bird, the trees sighs and makes sighing sound, breeze made by the breeze. The free bird thinks of the fat worm that will be his food. With the wind in his feathers, water and earth beneath him, and the whole sky with him, he feels majestic in his freedom. By naming the sky his own, the poet wishes to express that the bird knows himself to be the proprietor of this whole universe. Here the sky stands for the universe. Sky stands here for the universe. Now the fifth stanza. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied. So he opens his throat to sing. Now, the caged bird, inversely known that he is not flying in the sky. It is about the caged bird now. That he is not free, but a captive and a prisoner. He just stands on the grave of dreams. Again, grave of dreams here reflects about all the loss of opportunities, all the hopelessness that the caged bird can never achieve of. He knows his dreams of flying in a free firmament. Firmament means sky. To experience freedom, and that is futile. Futile means waste. He had lost all hopes of freedom. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. Now, what does shadow reflects here? This is very important. Shadow here reflects the lack of identity. You can note it down in your notebook. Lack of identity. It is more pitiable, more adverse than a nightmare. His wings are clipped and feet are tied, and there is little hope of freedom. So the bird opens his throat to sing. The bird wishes to travel against all adversity. Travel means surpass. There is a faint but kindling voice of hope in his song. Sixth stanza. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The sixth stanza is the last 3 or 4 lines of the sixth stanza is repetitive in nature, and when the concluding lines of any stanza gets repeated after a certain interval of time, it is called refrain. This is a poetic device, and it recurs as a stanza which justifies the bird's stout determination, strong determination to keep going after his dream of freedom. Moreover, the caged bird chooses to sing as this is the only freedom available to him, so that he can enjoy without any restriction. His wings are clipped, feet are tired, but his throat is not choked yet. Therefore, he sings of freedom. Right? This might be seen as the poet's message to raise our voice, to express ourselves, even though the stronger wants to suppress the weaker and never give up, no matter what situation we are in. This is the cosmic appeal of the poet. This poem might be focused in the civil rights movement, where the blacks are being suppressed by the whites, or this also connotes to the women being suppressed by the men. However, on a larger and a cosmic scale, it talks about the stronger wanting to suppress the weaker, and the weaker is never giving up, no matter what situation it is in. Thus, the poem uses a metaphor to compare cage bird to African Americans fighting for equality. Now, let us go very briefly through the figures of speech. First one is metaphor. Metaphor here, when in this first stanza, and floats downstream till the current ends. The poet uses metaphor when she compares wind to what I had discussed this in the opening stanza, if you have listened very carefully, right? So, this is important. Go through it. Alliteration, again the repetition of consonantal sounds, and here can seldom see through S, S, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, W, 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 and his shadow shouts on a nightmare screams, S consonantal sound, S shouts, and S screams. End rhyme and interline, there is a minute difference. You should understand it for your knowledge, that end rhyme is used in the second, fourth, and the sixth lines of the stanza when it is trill, still, and hill. But internal rhyme is used in the fourth stanza, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn. So, worms waiting, dawn, lawn, these are the internal rhyming. Imagery, there is a lot of vivid imagery in the poem. First is orange sun rays. It gives us the image of the sun setting, and the positivity, it vibrates throughout the poem. For the free bird, distant hills, again is an imagery where there is a far distance to achieve freedom. Fat worms, privileged food for birds. These are the visual imageries. While shying trees, nightmare screams, and fearful trill, as the word represents, are auditory images which reflects the sound in the poem and gives the reader an imagination of sound. Personification, the poet has used personification and dips his wings, again his, giving the bird the attributes of human beings, dares to claim the sky, name the sky his own, opens his throat to sing, sings of freedom. These are the attributes of human and is an example of personification. Repetition, again the poet has used repetition, repeated the third stanza later in the poem to emphasize the distressed condition of the downtrodden people. Let us go to the question and answers for a complete understanding. What is the theme of the poem? The theme of the poem is on a varied number of topics such as race, sexuality, love, and identity. What is the metaphor in the caged bird? The first metaphor is of the free bird for white Americans, and the caged bird is the metaphor of African Americans, the black Americans, and their captivity in the social norms. I hope you have understand. If you have understand this question correctly, then you will understand the whole poem. This is the crux of the whole poem. What kind of imagery is used? Imagery pertains to five senses. So, free bird, back of wind, orange sun rays, throat to sing. One is hearing, the other is visual for sight and feeling. You should understand it. Question is very important. Through the imagery of the words, I know why the caged bird sings. The poet is trying to comment on the status of women. So, there are four kinds of question, and the last question, which is of 4 marks, can have this type of question. So, you should understand it that it is focused not only on the distress of African Americans in comparison to the white counterparts, but in a patriarchal society, it also reflects to women enjoying lesser freedom than men. You should have an understanding of this question for the board examinations. What does fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn? If you have gone through the poem carefully, I have discussed it. What does fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn signify? It signifies that the privileged bird having opportunities which are always present at the hands of the free bird. This is to indicate the privilege that the white people of America enjoyed during the African Americans, who used to lead their life like the caged birds in the poem. What is the grave of dreams? Very important question. Why does a caged bird stand on the grave of dreams? The caged bird has no freedom. His feet are tied and his wings are clipped. So in this condition, all his dreams seem to be unachievable in his life. He has probably given up. Given up means surrendered. This is very important. On his dreams of liberty and flying freely in the sky, his dreams are now dead. This is why the poet says that the bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. Lack of identity. Why is the caged bird singing heard on a distant hill? The caged bird song is heard from the distant hill because it sings of freedom, it sings of hope, and wants to inspire others. The song is strong enough to be heard from a long distance. Very important question. These are the lines in the poem. His tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you very much. I hope this was meaningful.